Cool. Well, thank you very much, Ralph, for the invite. I really appreciate it. Glad to be here. Welcome, everybody. This session, we're going to be going from vibe coding to shippable app. And it's going to be a quick introduction to spec-driven development. Like I said before, for those of you that haven't checked in, feel free to check in. This app that you're scanning and bringing up on your phone was 100% vibe coded. In fact, my site, iCodeWith.ai, is 100% vibe coded in a very structured way. And that's what you're going to learn here today. Feel free to ask questions along the way. Real quick, a little bit about me. I've been in the tech industry, like Aral said, about 30 plus years in a variety of companies, had some startups. Currently building iCodeWith.ai. And the focus of it is to teach others the skills and mindset they need to build production-ready apps with AI without becoming a developer. So the key is this is for knowledge workers, domain experts, and business professionals, not for developers, to be able to build apps and test out their experiments that they've been wanting to do for a while. There's my contact info right there. Feel free to check out the website at iBuildWith.ai. Send me an email, Marcelo at iBuildWith.ai. And I'm on Discord, LinkedIn, I'm everywhere. So take a screenshot of this or just go to my website, and from there, everything is linked. Also, I have a Discord community for building with AI. Please feel free to join it. Take a picture of this, and you can scan it later if you like. Or on my website, just go to iBuildWith.ai under community, just join the Discord server. But there's a bunch of people there that just are building with AI. So feel free to join. All right. So that's that. The agenda for today is the following. We're going to be talking about what is specifically vibe coding and how is it different from AI assisted engineering? How good at coding should you be to vibe code? Why vibe coding doesn't always deliver what you want, and we know that, many of us, right? That when we first started, we were like, oh, this isn't good. Why the SDLC still matters, even when you're moving fast. And for those of you that don't know the SDLC, you'll know real quick what it is. An overview of spec-driven development frameworks, including the one that I created, and then we'll cover some vibe coding tips and best practices. I'm a person that I like, if you have questions, just ask, and Haral, if you want to just interrupt me, and I can answer the question as I go along, because I find that the question during the context of that presentation section it works best.
Yeah,
and then
we do have one raised hand already.
Oh, somebody already raised their hand. Okay. And we haven't even started.
Okay, Donald, you can unmute and talk.
Oh, so sorry, guys. Just a misclick there.
Okay.
Okay, there you go. I was wondering. No problem at all. And also at the end, if we have time, and Haral, you've been in my meetups, I tend to go on forever. Cut me off whenever the time comes, but if we have some time, we're going to jump into VS Code, and I'll show you the difference between structure vibe coding and just regular vibe coding, so you have an idea. So the other thing that's really important to understand, whoever tells you they're an expert in vibe coding, they're lying, because vibe coding really, the reality, it hasn't really started until the beginning of this year. And anybody that is an expert they're faking it, because the reality is that I'm just 2 chapters ahead of you, probably 2 weeks ahead of you. And I'm just presenting here. Next week, you could be the one presenting. So keep that in mind. We're all learning together here, and the market changes constantly. So a lot of the stuff that I may tell you today, in 2 weeks, it may be proven wrong because it just constantly changes. That's the way it goes. All right, so I'm going to jump in. We'll go ahead and get started. What is vibe coding and how is it different from AI assisted engineering? So from a vibe coding perspective, it is idea first. It's idea driven. It's all about the idea. It is very exploratory. It's improvisational. You start with a big, broad idea, and then you talk to AI and refine it. And you go through the interactions with AI until you kind of understand what you're trying to do, and hopefully AI understands what you're trying to do as well. So if you put this in sort of musical terms, this would be more like jazz. If we're putting this more like an airplane, you would be the passenger in this airplane, right? You got the pilot that's taking you where you're going. You know you bought the ticket. You know you want to go to wherever you want to go to, but the pilot pretty much is deciding everything. That's vibe coding for you. AI assisted engineering, this is more focused on the developers. And this is really very systematic, very iterative. It starts with the clear requirements. It's very methodical. It optimizes for velocity, sustained velocity, which is important, and specifically reliability. And in this case, the developer or the person in charge in AI assisted engineering is usually the pilot, where AI is more of the assistant, the helper, right? So now there are times where developers are vibe coding as well to get started on some of the things. They'll vibe code. But in general, AI assistant engineering is what it is. AI is assisting, where in vibe coding, AI is leading, right? And the key here, and we're going to talk about this real quick, but the key is vibe coding breaks because we're not doing some of the things that an AI assistant engineer does. Some of the systematic, iterative process, methodical, everything I listed there. We need to bring some of that into vibe coding without, without taking away the jazzy kind of feel for it, right? So in vibe coding, you're basically jamming with AI. Some days you make music. This is pure vibe coding. Some days it's just noise. It doesn't work, but it's always creative. With AI assisted engineering, you're basically conducting a performance that needs to land every single time. That's the big difference. So the question is, how do we blend both of these together so non-developers can create apps that are scalable, that are maintainable, that are production ready? That's the key here. So how good at coding should you be to vibe code? Or in other words, when should you add a human in the loop? So it depends. I know everybody hates that. I hate that answer, but it really does depend because you got to consider some things. For example, um, are you doing this app for yourself, for your friends, or is this going to be an app that needs to scale to millions of people, right? Now, what are the potential risks of this app? What could go wrong? And what is the impact of those risks? For example, you create an app that requires people to verify themselves by uploading some sort of legal document, let's say a driver's license or passport, whatever. Well, the potential risks are really high, right? Of somebody breaking in and taking that. And the risk impact is huge if somebody breaks in, steals all that information, and then uses it. And as an example, there was an app called the T app. You can look it up on Google that had that problem. It was vibe coded. They didn't do a risk assessment like this, and they got broken into, and a bunch of legal documents were stolen for millions of users. It was really, really bad. And of course, everybody blamed vibe coding when the reality, it wasn't AI's fault. It wasn't vibe coding's fault. It was the fault of the product owner that didn't do a risk assessment and knew when to bring in a human in the loop. And I say this, bring in a human in the loop, not just when you're using AI, but when you're using a human developer, right? If I'm creating an app that has high risks and the impact of those risks are super high, I'm going to bring in, for example, many of you, a cybersecurity specialist. Can you please check what this developer did to make sure that everything is okay and we're not going to have potential issues? The visibility and exposure, right, of this app, potential business disruption. What happens if this goes down? What happens to your business? What about financial wise, reputation consequences? And are there any safety risk? If you're doing an app, let's say for kids, you got to consider some of these things. Or not even that. I mean, are you going to byte code an app that monitors the heart? Maybe, but you're going to bring in the right people to make sure that it's working properly, right? So again, the answer to how good at coding should you be really requires on this list. If you're creating on a weekend a video game for yourself or for your kids to play, go for it. You don't need to do any of this risk assessment. But if you're creating something that's going to be for millions of users, they're going to be uploading personal documents, then yeah, you better make sure you know what AI wrote, number one, and more importantly, bring another human on the loop to double check whatever AI or human did, right? Very, very important. So vibe coding invites creativity, but responsibility keeps it in tune. The bigger the stakes, the more necessary your human touch becomes. So that's my sort of recommendation to you. Now, why doesn't vibe coding always deliver what you want? So a couple of things. Lack of clear goals leads to scattered results. So if you don't know what you want, AI will know what you want. So if you don't know what the goal of your app is, if you don't truly understand what you're trying to build, then you're going to have scattered results. AI will make assumptions when intent is vague. So if you don't know exactly, again, what you're trying to build, AI will start making assumptions. So you want to put guardrails around that. And you'll see how we do that in a minute. Code may work, but lacks cohesion or structure. So in other words, you may tell AI to do something and AI will write it for you without a problem. It'll work, but it doesn't have structure, it doesn't have cohesion. It's hard to maintain later on. So you want to put some, again, guardrails in place, some framework, some guidance in place to make this work properly. Sometimes it's hard to reproduce or scale what you've built. So you may create an app and now you need to scale that app and now it won't scale because the way it was coded. And this happens to many of us. Returning to a project later feels like starting over. AI will forget. They're working on memories and ways to refresh. And my framework, I have a command where you literally, every time you log in, you say, hey, relearn the project, and it takes 2 seconds and it relearns where it's at and it can continue developing. And by the way, when I say my framework, this is a Cody framework, which is available on GitHub. It's free, so I'm not selling anything. It's just you can get it from there. And I'll show you how to get it there. And then momentum will stall when context gets lost, right? When you don't know what you're building, when AI doesn't know what you're building and it delivers wrong things, that's it. Momentum is gone. You stall, you just give up, and then you post on Twitter or X or LinkedIn. You post, "Oh, I hate vibe coding. Vibe coding will never take off here." So AI, keep this in mind. And actually, I say AI doesn't know what you meant. It only knows what you said. We can replace that with humans, right? Like my wife doesn't know what I meant. She only knows what I said, but that's the reality. So it's not just what you thinking here, and then you type something different. You have to be very specific with the AI so that it can deliver exactly what you want. So as an example, I hire a painter and I just tell them, please paint my house. What's going to happen if I do that? Right? They're going to go and either start asking me questions, which is the proper thing to do, or in many cases, AI, the painter, will go and start painting and it'll paint it pink. It'll paint the outside and it'll paint the inside a different color. When in reality, what I wanted was please paint my two-story house with a navy blue exterior and white trim and use light gray for all interior walls. I'd like it done within a week and my budget is $5,000. Huge difference here because now, I mean, this is still, we can add more details, right? But the difference between this and this is huge. At a minimum, with this one, you're going to end up with a navy blue exterior and white trim, and hopefully under $5,000. Where with this one, you have no clue what you're going to end up with. It's up to the painter to basically decide what they want to do, right? So that's really important. So context, details, be very specific. So let's talk about the SDLC, which is the software development lifecycle. I'm sure many of you know about that. Some of you may not know that, but it's a process that outlines how software goes from an idea to a working product. So it's a structural way of turning ideas into working software. That's all it is. And you have different methodologies like waterfall, like agile. It doesn't matter which methodology you adapt. In with vibe coding, it's going to be super agile, right? Because you're going very fast and you iterate constantly. But the point here is that you want to bring in some structure. So it's not about all that paper. If you heard about the SDLC and many people go, oh, it's all about documentation and we have so much paperwork. It's not about that. It's about the flow. The flow, which is let's plan this. Before we start coding, let's plan it. Then we'll build it. Then we'll test it. Then we'll release it and then we'll iterate. Now, many of you would go, well, but that's waterfall. Well, I mean, agile is kind of like waterfall, right? But you're doing it in sprints. So it's the same thing here. You want to go through that process. That process, for example, when I'm vibe coding, that process is usually an hour to 2 hours to 3 hours, maybe a day max, but it's still going through that process. I don't go from, hey, I want to do this and now go code it, right? Because you wouldn't tell a developer, I want to build an app to track my goals, and then the developer goes and starts coding. That wouldn't work like that. You want to figure out, okay, how does it work? What are some of the specs? What are we gonna, you want to figure out the why and the how, and you'll see in a minute what I mean by that. So think of the SDLC as a map. Without a map, you risk going fast in the wrong direction or not being able to find your way back when you get lost. So the SDLC is really, really important. Okay, so this is where spec-driven development comes in. This is sort of that magic of bringing a little bit of structure to all that creativity without stifling the creativity, right? You still want to be able to be creative. You still want to be able to allow AI to do what it does, which is be non-deterministic, which allows it to be super creative and help you figure out things that maybe you didn't even know you wanted. But the SDLC will put a little bit of structure in there. And that's what spec-driven development is. So you begin with requirements, right? You talk about, I want to build XYZ, I want to build a task app. You start figuring out what are some of the requirements. What do I mean by that? What do we need? What kind of features do we need? Who are the customers for it? And again, I'm talking about a professional, in a professional setting here. I'm not talking about if you're at home and you're creating a quick app for you because you just want to do it, or you're creating a video game. That's totally different. I'm talking about if you want to do something very professional, then you want to follow this. After you have your requirements, you want to have some design notes. How are we going to build this? What kind of technologies are we going to use? Why are we using those technologies? Will these technologies scale? Um, After that, you want to then, once you figured out the why and you figured out the how, then you start outlining tasks. Like, what do we need to do to even get there, right? Then use these specs, that's why it's called spec-driven development, as your shared blueprint. So this will help align you and AI. And believe me, it'll be an eye-opener because AI will help you along the way to figure out the best way, things that you haven't thought about, the best way to get there. What are some of the alternative frameworks you can use? Why do you want to use those frameworks? What are some of the positives and negatives of those frameworks? This is extremely important. And then you can use these specs to guide the creativity towards shippable results. Here's where things change. It used to be that code is the focus and everything is in code, and your specs is something that you started, your design, your PRD, you started it, but then you forgot it and it quickly went out of sync with code once you updated, added new features. Nobody ever updated documentation. With spec-driven development, and this is happening today, spec is your primary source code. It's the source of truth. And whenever you want to add a new feature, you go to the spec and update the spec. You figure out what that feature is. You go through the process, the SDLC process about that feature, and then AI will use that spec to to code it, to write the actual feature, the version, the chunk, whatever you want to call it. And that's where spec-driven development comes in. And that's where spec-driven development brings in structure into all of this potentially chaotic creativity, which you still want to keep, right? So, and literally a mind shift in thinking where code is your main source of truth. Now the spec becomes the main source of truth, and everything is updated there, and then code is generated through that spec. So, quick reminder: if you have any questions along the way, please feel free to ask. Otherwise, I'm going to speed through there. Okay. Why spec-driven development? So, spec-driven development will bridge the gap between creativity and structure, just like I said. It creates a shared source of truth, so we have all those specs that have shared source of truth. It will reduce rework, guaranteed it will reduce rework because AI will now have structure. It'll have documentation of how things were done before. It'll have documentation of what worked and what didn't before to improve itself for the next iteration. It improves the collaboration and handoff. There may be a point where you go, you know what, we need to give this now to engineers to scale it, move it to production, whatever it may be. Or you may be collaborating or handing it off to a different team so that way they can continue. And it makes AI outputs more predictable. And that's extremely important. Even though AI is non-deterministic, you still want to, as much as possible, the structure should be very predictable. And then, of course, at the end of the day, it makes your project scalable and maintainable. As an example, I build with AI. Like I said, it's 100% vibe coding from the beginning to today. And I'll show you, if we have time, I'll show you the number of versions and sprints that I had, even though these sprints were a day or a couple hours, of how that process went through and all the planning that went through and the iterations that went through there. I see there's a comment or a question, so I'll let Haral read it, and then if you want to interrupt, Haral, feel free. So there are frameworks out there. You could create your own. Frameworks are pretty much agents that are written in Markdown, and some are more extensive than others. For example, with mine, the Cody Product Builders Toolkit, you can go to GitHub, you can read the whole thing. It's a bunch of Markdown files that guide the AI through a process with templates and some scripts and things like that. But most of them are like that. So there's a variety of spec-driven frameworks. Mine is one of them. Mine is focused on the non-developer. So it's focused on the knowledge worker, on the domain expert, on the business professional that wants to start experimenting and creating apps without having development knowledge. Then you have others which are really great as well. For example, Kiro, Anti-Gravity. They're both frameworks and also IDEs from Amazon and Google. Anti-Gravity was just released probably a couple of weeks ago, maybe. Then you have SpecKit, which is a big one from GitHub itself. And then there's another one called BMAD Method, which if you go on my website, I actually interviewed the guy that created this. Is a very popular one, and it's used not just for coding, but for other things as well. But there's a bunch of these kinds of spec-driven frameworks that you can use to start bringing that structure into your process when you're vibe coding. So the whole thing, the one thing to keep in mind is that when you're watching a YouTube video and the YouTube video says, I built this in 5 minutes, it's a lie. If it's a really good app that's scalable, it wasn't built in 5 minutes. There was some design thinking process that went in there. But if it was built in 5 minutes, I can guarantee you that it is not going to be a scalable app. That it won't be able to be pushed to production and scale to 1 million people. So these frameworks will help you along. Real quick on the Cody framework, or the Cody Product Builder Toolkit. It's a spec-driven framework. that helps domain experts. That's the key here, is domain experts build scalable apps. It's divided in most frameworks will be divided like this. You're going to have a planning phase and then you're going to have a building phase. In the planning phase, you take your raw idea, like what is it that you're trying to build, and then you go through it with AI through an interview process. And you can do this on your own. You can actually tell AI, hey, I'm thinking of building this app, but don't build it yet. Ask me questions until you fully understand what I'm trying to build, and I fully understand what I'm trying to build. Just doing that simple process right there is going to improve the output immediately. Instead of saying, hey, I want to build this up, go build it. But the planning phase is basically where you're planning, right? You're transforming that raw idea into actionable development documents. Then you jump in once you figure it all out, and that's where you're going to have your PRD, product requirements document, your planning document, your design document. You're going to have the why of what you're trying to build and the how. How do you go about it? Then you could jump into build. But when you jump into the build phase, you want to build in chunks. You're going to get the worst results when you tell AI, go build it, and it goes and tries to build the entire app immediately. You do not want to do that. What you want to do is you want to build it in small pieces, right? In chunks, in versions, in releases, whatever you want to call them. But you want to build them in chunks. So you say, I'm going to build a task app. But what do I need? Well, I need to log in. So I want to build in a login module. I need to have users register. Oh, let's build a register module. So you break it like that. I need to build tasks. I need to have tasks send reminders. All of these are chunks that make up the entire app. Now, keep one thing in mind. You may be saying, oh my God, this is way too much for me to think about. I don't even know. This sounds like me being a developer. No, it's not. It's you asking AI to help you, and AI will do all that work for you. Now, but you're there as the orchestrator, as a director, as the architect, reviewing everything, making sure that what it's telling you, it's like, yeah, this is the vision of where I want to go. But AI will do most of the work for you. And in Cody, you also I have a section where it's sort of a library that kind of helps steer the conversation along the process as well. Technical documents, rules, prompts, assets, and more. Okay, so hopefully that gives you a good idea about how vibe coding by itself is a broken process. Vibe coding is a technique that you will use along with spec-driven development to bring in a scalable app. So let me give you, I'm going to stop right here. Haral, do we have any questions, or should I continue with some of the best tips and best practices?
No question. There is well, kind of says what you're not saying here is that you even use the AI agent to iterate over the specs and refine them and find out those alternatives and pros and cons to decide on, say, this data storage layer to use on the front end framework, etc., before you have the agent start coding.
Right. I think I said it after maybe he posted that. I started saying where AI can do a lot of this and can iterate with you. Like he said, like was it
Yeah.
Donald? Donald said,
Yes, correct. Yep.
provide options, and not only provide options, but give you ideas that you may not have thought about, ideas that you don't even know about. For example, I've written many apps already. If you go to my GitHub, you'll see I have lots of apps on a variety of technologies that on my own, I would have never been able to code. I coded in Swift. My website is in Hugo. The app that you use today to check in, it's Svelte. All of these technologies I would have never known about on my own. I would have to learn all of them, but AI has suggested for various reasons what to use one over another one for the particular kind of product that I was building. And I think that's what Donald was trying to say as well, and which is what I emphasized before, which is use AI to guide you and help you through all of these alternatives, to help you find out the why of why you're building this app, and to help you find out the how. How do we build this app before we even build it? All right, some best practices that I highly recommend all of you to follow as you're going through your vibe coding journey. Think like a systems architect. I think in the future, almost everybody will have to be sort of a product manager, systems architect, orchestrator, and less about the code. So it's not about how do you implement this piece of functionality in the code, but it's more about the architecture, is how do all these pieces fit together and how can I make it so they scale, right? So you have to start thinking and learning more like an architect and less like just a hands-on coder, basically. So define your project vision clearly, right? That's important because it helps you as the product owner, but it also helps AI understand what it's trying to build. Going back to that paint my house versus the super detailed of everything that I wanted, right? As much as you can, right? Obviously, with software, you're going to keep iterating and it'll adjust. One of the things, because a lot of AI was trained on a certain cutoff date, if you stick to mainstream, well-documented tech stack, it'll do much better, right? So Next.js, SvelteKit, whatever it may be. Just try to stick to one of those as opposed to something that is super brand new or extremely old. But what I do recommend, though, even though I can't code by hand Hugo or SvelteKit or Swift, I know the high level of how it works, the pieces of how they fit together, because I can help AI guide AI through the process, right? So once you figure out with AI, what is the framework we're going to be using? What is the technology? Take it upon yourself to go learn. And how do you learn? Well, obviously you could do the YouTube, the old ways of learning, right? Going to YouTube and videos and all that. But the other way to learn is actually ask AI. I mean, I've learned so much just by literally when AI says, oh, we're going to do this, you just say, why are we doing this? Can you explain it to me? And you start learning this. Okay. Break the work into small, this is going to be huge. Small, even though it's small manageable steps. This will make a huge difference. Do not develop your app all at once in full because it's just not going to work. AI is much better at focusing on specific things and will deliver exactly, right? When you narrow it down, it's much easier to deliver that than to deliver all of this at once. So break it into manageable steps. Maybe you don't know how many steps or what the chunk should be. That's fine. Ask AI, saying, okay, we're going to build this app. um, how should we break this up? You know, how many versions should we have? How many chunks should we have? How many sprints should we have? How many features? You can ask it however you want to. AI will understand. If not, you will explain what you mean, but break it into manageable steps and let AI focus on those because not only will it deliver better, but then you can test to make sure that that works better and then you can check that in and then move on to the next thing. How many of you, if you've been vibe coding, and I know that's happened to me at the beginning, where you're doing a bunch of stuff and you're vibe coding a bunch with AI, and then AI just messes everything up, and you literally lost everything because you can't go back. But if you break it into manageable chunks, you can code that, have AI code it, test it, it works, check it into version control, and that's going to be another best practice. Check it into version control, and you move on to the next. So if the next thing gets messed up, guess what? You can revert and then start again on that feature set. All right,
So
let's
one
see.
question was, how do
Yeah.
you make sure that small manageable pieces are well synchronized, do not interfere with each other?
Oh, how do you, well, either you know from a high level how things work, number one, or you literally have AI, and that's where frameworks come in because frameworks help AI focus on small things, but keep the picture of the big picture in mind, right? Understand the entire system. So that's where I always go back to you let AI do it. You make sure that when it's building something, You tell AI, hey, as you're building this, you need to make sure that there are no collisions with other code, that it will fit properly within the framework. There are many times, like with my Hugo website, at the beginning, when I wasn't using a framework, that AI would just build things on its own that didn't follow Hugo best practices. But now it knows it's a Hugo website with a Hugo framework and it has to follow those best practices, right? So you need to tell it. And as you tell it and or you ask it, you will start learning and you will start telling AI, hey, make sure that what you've done here doesn't collide with this other thing you've done.
And I don't want to jump ahead, but how do you make sure the vibe coded app does not have the basic vulnerabilities like outlined in the OSPF 10?
So that's where you have to bring a human in the loop, right? You've got to make sure because the reality is this. Let's say I hire you and you're a top-notch developer and you're creating this app, but you're not that great on security. Of course you are, but as an example, you're not great on security, you're just a human developer. Well, I'm going to bring in a security expert to make sure, and again, we go back to the risk assessment that we spoke about before, right? If the risk is super low and you're just doing this for yourself, you don't need to do that. But if the risks are high, the risk impacts are high, you want to scale, you want to make sure you bring a human in the loop. You're not going to be able to get away in a professional setting where you're going to be selling an app, having a subscription, whatever you're going to do with it, and it'll scale. You're going to have to bring a human in the loop unless you are that human in the loop that are able to verify everything that AI is doing. And if you are, then you're good to go. But there is no, I know many people go, oh, have another model, check it out. Well, how do you know as the human, if you don't know what it's checking, how do you know that it's okay just because AI told you? So at the end of the day, you're not going to be able to get away from humans or experts that understand whatever you're trying to check. Anything else? We're good?
Yeah, let's move on.
Okay. Provide the AI with context and examples. That's something that we spoke about with the paint example, right? But provide it context. Context is everything. That's why I like people asking questions now because it's in the context of what we're talking about, right? It's the same thing with AI, providing lots of context to AI. For example, when you're creating this function, let's say, make sure you follow the standards of all our functions. Or for example, for my website, whenever I create a new page, AI knows that, and I tell it, and it's in my agent file, that whenever you're creating new pages, if you're going to be creating new CSS, make sure you follow the design system. Do not create new CSS. Don't hardcode CSS within the page. Make sure it's all centralized in the library. Make sure you follow the design system. Do not duplicate or create new CSS styles if they already exist. Do not use a style from a different kind of page if we're going to use it in this new page and it requires one minor tweak that will affect the other page. All of these things is context that the AI needs to know, just like a human needs to know. Test the output and iterate frequently. Again, we spoke about that. You want to, if you break it into chunks, the nice thing about doing that is you work on just that functionality, you test that functionality, you iterate until it works properly, and then you're done with that functionality and you move on to the next piece. I can't believe that people don't do this, but version control and some AI development agents will now offer checkpoints, but I still believe in Git version control. Use version control to save your code. Extremely important because you can create, test, it's working, then you check that in, then you move on to the next piece of functionality, and AI will create it and destroy everything. And that's okay because you can then disregard this, revert back to the previous version, and then start again. As opposed to you do that and it destroys your entire app and you have no version, no prior version, and now you have to start all over because it's too late to have AI undo what it did. because it's undone it so many times that it's now spaghetti code and it's really bad. So use version control and check in often. Very, very important. There are times when it's okay to tell AI, stop. I've told it times where we go back and it goes, oh, great. Yes, you're right. I found the reason for the bug. And then it goes and fixes it. And then the bug is still there. And then you tell it and it goes, oh, yes, now I know why. And you keep doing this. And there are times where you go, enough. You literally can tell AI, stop. You reset it, and then you restart again. So literally, you may close the session, and if you have Git right, it's perfect because it could continue from the previous version. But you want to close the session, clear out the memory because sometimes the context will get polluted and AI will just go off rail, and you start again. Learn the basics and review the AI's code. If that's your intent to do that, I would recommend that. Try to understand the basics of the SDLC, the basics of some frameworks, and start looking at it because the more you'll look at this stuff, the more you'll start understanding how things work, why things were written a particular way, and you can help correct or guide AI in the future. Okay. You want to test different models. Not all models are created equal, right? And models are improved constantly. So if you have a model that was terrible before, don't think it's terrible today. It may have improved and gotten much better than the best model that was there yesterday. So the whole key here is that models are improved constantly. New models come out, so test as often as possible and see what works and what doesn't. Different models will act differently, just like different humans. Developers will be different. You'll have some junior developers, some senior developers, some architect developers, some developers that have certain techniques that others don't. So you might want to check it out and don't just get stuck on one model. Right now, I'm using Sonnet 4.5, Opus 4.5 from Anthropic are really good models. But the GPT-5 Codex is also good. I mean, there's some cheap ones. Gemini 3 Flash, you have Gemini 3 Pro now that you can use for maybe some minor updates that are cheaper. And then for the real hard stuff, for example, let's say you're designing an architecture, you may use Opus 4.5, but then you're updating some small bugs. And it's simple stuff. You can go to Gemini Flash. You can use Olama with local models on your computer if you have the GPU and the power to do so. So the key here is think of models as developers, and different models may have different positives and negatives. Again, test different tools. I'm a huge Cloud Code user. I love Cloud Code. But today, Cloud Code, tomorrow Codex, the day after tomorrow, it could be Cursor again. Who knows? Apps, these tools are constantly updated. So what you think may be bad today may be great tomorrow again. Think about naming conventions. Make sure you have naming conventions in place. And you tell AI, I want you to follow these naming conventions, whatever it may be. It may be naming conventions for your variables. It may be naming conventions for your functions. It may be naming conventions for your table field names. It may be naming conventions for your content management. Whatever it is, think about conventions, naming conventions, very important. And then tell AI to always keep the code dry. Dry is a development philosophy, which means do not repeat yourself. So, as an example, if you have a function that accepts an email and verifies that that email is a valid email, let's say, and you're using that in 20 different places, you're not going to have the same code in 20 different places. Now, AI may end up doing that, right? But if you tell AI, no, you want to follow the dry principle, then AI will know, oh, we have a function that checks for validity of email, and we're using that in 100 different places. So we're going to use that same function everywhere. So if we need to update that function, right, it will be updated everywhere. So again, you are the architect. You're the one that understands this, and you guide AI through this whole process. Now, on some development agents, you have parallel development AI agents, which means that not only can you have multiple agents work, but they can work together at the same time. So you can have, for example, Cloud Code has the ability to do what they call sub-agents. And literally, if I'm coding, let's say, a particular functionality, let's say we're doing a login screen, I can say you have an orchestrator agent that will manage the whole process of that module. But then I can say, hey, make sure you use parallel agents to code the front end, the back end, the database, the business model, whatever it may be. So then you'll have three parallel agents going at the same time. So you're literally speeding things up. They're going at the same time, reporting back to the orchestrating agent. So now there are some potential issues there, right? Where you have subagents not talking to each other. Because subagents today, at least in Cloud Code, they can't talk to each other, but they can talk back to the orchestrator. So you have to make sure things, kind of like in a real team, you got to make sure the communication flows properly. But using parallel development agents will help speed up the process. And again, keep task focused, right? So what I mean by this, and we all do this, I do it all the time. I'm speaking with AI, I'm vibe coding, and I come up with an idea. I'm like, oh, not only do this, but can you also go do this? Right? So maybe I'm working on the login screen, but I just came up with an idea for the what's new screen. Well, I don't want to tell it during this session where we're focused on the login screen about my new idea that has nothing to do with login screen. Because AI will go, oh, yeah, sure, I'll help you. And now it's doing multiple things, and that's where things start going wrong. So keep your task focused. Make a note of that wonderful idea, put it aside, and then come back to AI and have it work on that particular idea separately. And if you do have a preferred approach to accomplishing a task, tell the agent, hey, I want you to do it this way. I prefer for you to do this thing. It's okay because you are the architect. You're the one that understands your vision and you understand what you're trying to do. Now, what I do is, and I find this very helpful, is I go, hey, I prefer to do it this way, but, and I literally type this in, I go, do you see any issues with this? Please feel free to challenge me. I tell AI to challenge me because I hate when AI says, oh, that's a great idea. It's like, no, I don't want a yes person or a yes AI. I want to be challenged. I want to make sure I'm doing this right. So literally, whenever I tell it to do something, I always say, do you see issues with this? Do you see potential liabilities with this? Is there a better approach and why? By saying those things as you're context engineering, as you're prompting AI, you're going to learn things too. And AI may go, no, there are no potential issues, or here are the potential issues. Do you accept them, kind of thing. But it's very important that you do that. I have other best practices. I know we're way over time, and I did want to jump in and see if I can show you. But feel free to scan that. That'll take you a link to that blog article that has many, many more in there. And like I said, if you scanned at the beginning, you'll get more information. Just to close it up before I jump into the code, Haral, I just want to say that to me, this is an amazing time we're living in tech. I've gone through three tech revolutions. This is the fourth one for me, the desktop, internet, mobile, and now AI. So I hope everybody enjoys the ride. And there's my contact info if you have any questions. And I don't know, I can answer any more questions, or if we have any more time, I can jump into the code. Otherwise, we can end it here.
We're short on time, but I would still love to jump into the code for a few minutes. So if you can do that.
Sure. Let me stop sharing. Let me share again. And let me go into, let's make sure. Yep. Okay. You should be able to see VS Code. Tell me if you can see that.
Yep.
Okay. So here I just created a simple project, it's blank right now. And I have two instances of Claude Code. One where I instantiated the Cody framework. That's the framework that I created. And you can see here that it says Cody Product Builder Toolkit, and it's giving you some information. And here we just have a blank just a blank Claude code. What I'm going to do in this blank code is I'm going to say, I want you to build a task app for me to update my tasks daily so I don't forget them. So I'm going to take that and I'm going to hit enter. And you can see that this is live. This is actually going live. So it's great. I'm going to help you build the app. It's looking at my current project right now. And look, it already created their to-dos. And check it out. It's designing the app architecture. Now imagine it's already doing stuff, right? Imagine if I would have gone to a developer and I would have told the developer that, and the developer said, "Oh, that's enough information. I don't need anything else. Let's go see." And it's trying to build the HTML already. I'm like, no, I'm not. How can you build something that you have no clue what I'm trying to build? The difference between that's vibe coding right there. Pure jazz, remember? No structure. Here, I instantiated the Cody framework. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to say Cody plan. And the first thing that it will ask me, so it's going through the thing here. It's trying to understand the process. And we'll let it, there we go. What do you want to create? It's asking me, what do you want to create? I'm pasting the same thing. Now watch this. And I'm not going to go through this whole process because it's going to take a while. I'll jump into another project to show you everything that it does. Okay, it says, great. I'm going to ask you questions to fully understand the outcome you want. If you are not sure how to answer, just type help me and I'll provide you with some examples. So for example, here's going to ask me 10 questions. Isn't this the way development should work, right? You can't just jump in. You got to start. So who is the primary user? You can type in help and it's going to give you some options to choose from, or you can type in if you already know. So it's saying, here's some possible users. So you can see here it says question 1 of 10, right? I'm not going to go through all 10 of them. What I'm going to do right now, and I just wanted to show you the huge difference between having a framework that guides you, and this is just the planning phase, and just vibe coding, where it already started coding, and then people would be frustrated because it would have coded something that it thought you wanted, but not really deliver what you wanted. So let me jump in real quick into my website. This is iBuild.ai. I'm going to show you. And I want to show you, okay. So I was actually creating a blog article today, but I'm going to show you under Cody here, project, under the plan phase. Remember plan? Here's my PRD for, let me close this up. This is the PRD that AI a long time ago created with me and keeps it up to date with milestones, data model. What is it that I want to do? My PRD, the why of my website, right? And then as I build it, I want you to see, we were talking about breaking it into chunks. Version 1.1.0, okay? All the way to 1.8.5, which I just released 2 days ago, adding a new video page. And every single one of these chunks has a design document, which is, what are we doing, right? Create a new video section on demand video content under the Learn menu. And we go into the key features, the technical architecture. Now, this is all AI writing for this. This isn't me writing it. I read it, verify it. Then it creates a task list. Okay, for this version, here's the tasks. And you can see how it breaks it into phases. Then we tell it, okay, go build. And it'll build phase 1. We test it. And then we check it into Git, build phase 2, phase 3, so on and so forth. Excuse me, my apologies. When we're done, let me get a little bit of water real quick. AI will look at and build a retrospective for this particular version. What went well? What could be improved? What were some challenges faced? Actions for future versions. This is the same thing for every single version that I've done. This is the site is about, I would say maybe 7 months old now. So you can see how I continuously update it, right? And not only that, but I have a feature backlog for the entire site with all of the versions and all the backlog, and a release notes that AI maintains for me as well. You can see version 1. You can see all the versions when I started doing release notes, right? This is the SDLC along with creativity to be able to create a scalable solution. So hopefully that gives you sort of an idea of how you can literally create a production ready app or website using vibe coding. All of this is 100% vibe coded. So um, anything I can answer on that? I think somebody was asking, what is this framework? Is it MD files? Yes, it's MD files and scripts. It's a variety. If you go to iBuildWith.ai, click on build, you'll see Cody framework. It'll take you to the GitHub. You can install it. It's this here. You'll have this Cody file. You won't see project because that's what you build when you're building your app, but you'll see the config, and the config has a bunch of commands. This is what guides the AI, regardless if it's Cloud Code, GitHub Copilot, Codex, doesn't matter which one you use it on. You just activate it and it'll go, basically. It'll start guiding you through the whole process. Yeah.
And about your earlier statement about when to bring a person in about security, Nick made a comment in Q&A that you can use a tool like SNCC, which does static code analysis, and it can identify vulnerabilities. So you can use tools as well.
Yes, you can use tools, but at the end of the day, if your app has high risks and high risk impacts, even a tool, you still want to bring a human, right? That can validate the tool as well. Because if you don't know, if the tool says everything is good, but you don't know really what you're approving, to me, it's all about risks assessment.
Yep.
So a human, at least you've got somebody you can go after later. Anything else? Hopefully this was helpful. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. And I love, as you can tell, I love chatting and going about this. So
Okay, that was great. Thanks.
thank you.
All right, I'm going to move on to the next presentation, our last one. Dustin Lair is a co-founder at Catalyst, an application security advocate at Security Journey, consulting on developer-centric security cultures through security champion programs. As a speaker, author, and content creator, he developed the Security Champion Program Success Guide and co-founded the global Let's Talk Software Security community. His session may handle the basics, but vigilance still required, emphasizes human review of AI outputs to counter creative attackers. Dustin, are you ready?
I am ready. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, hold on. Let me stop the previous recording. Forgot